We're back to Author's Corner on the Simply G Media Network. Again, go to simplyg.com for more information. Also, TotalTutor.net, Twitter, Total Tutor, Neil S. Haley, Facebook. And Author's Corner, I usually go solo, but I talked to my co-host of the Celebrity Show, and he said because of this author, he wanted to be on the call, especially with his relationship with Dale Brown and being a huge college basketball fan. So I want to welcome to the program my co-host of the Celebrity Show and other shows, GJ Reynolds. GJ, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, and I think you got to tell the truth. You're getting lonely. You needed two authors on the show.
Exactly. You've not had the opportunity to go Author's Corner. You were on my show before I started the show, Author's Corner. But yes, another fantastic author. We have two great authors on the list. Really excited to be teaming up with Triumph Books and such fantastic books. And when I heard I was going to interview him, I was so pumped up. I already went out to his Facebook fan page and different things. So I want to welcome to the program author Ken Davis, author of 100 Things Kansas Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die, which I love the title of all these different 100 Things books. Ken, thanks for calling.
Neil, appreciate you having me on, and hello to you, GJ. I appreciate you guys talking about the book, and it's a great thing that you've done hooking up with Triumph Books. Great organization, and I think this is a very interesting series. I had a chance to look through some of the other books, and it's interesting to see how everybody takes, the approach that everybody takes. Everybody's a little bit different, but it's in the same genre all along, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah, I had the 49ers one on. I'm going to have the Ravens on next month. And, again, wish that there was a Pittsburgh Steeler one. Maybe there was or there will be. I'll have to kind of push Triumph Books for that. But I'm a huge Kansas Jayhawk fan. And, again, Ken, basically tell us your background in certain aspects, specifically that made you the knowledge of writing this book about Kansas.
Well, I grew up in Overland Park, Kansas. Kind of got hooked on the Jayhawks at an early age. Back in the days of JoJo White, they used to have the old Big 8 tournament, holiday tournament in Kansas City at the old Municipal Auditorium, a site of many Final Fours that people probably don't remember that before Kemper Arena and all that. But the Big 8 used to play a holiday tournament before everybody got a little money hungry with the postseason tournaments, and you would start playing before your conference season. You'd play between Christmas and New Year's in a tournament where you would play for essentially a preseason tournament title, and it was always cool, and it created some interesting situations because you could play people three times in the regular season, which probably most coaches don't want to do these days. But that's my first memories of college basketball, and then went to a few games while I was in high school over in Lawrence at Allen Fieldhouse, and then I graduated from high school in '76 and started at KU then, and graduated from KU School of Journalism in 1980. Started my newspaper career in St. Joseph, Missouri, which is just north of Kansas City, and then made stops in Binghamton, New York, and Baltimore before coming to the Hartford Courant in 1985, and I've been in Connecticut ever since then. I took a buyout from the newspaper business about 8 years ago, and been working on freelance assignments, and I've worked for NBC Sports and FoxSports.com as a college basketball writer. So things have changed a little bit in the industry. After 25 years in the newspaper business, I was a little discouraged by some of the things that were going on. So I've moved on, and you can find me anywhere on the internet just about now. So when I came to Hartford, I sort of developed a specialty in college basketball. I've covered just about everything, but the college basketball kind of became my hook when I got here covering UConn basketball, and Jim Calhoun came 1 year after me, and that obviously the growth of that program has been amazing since Jim Calhoun came in 1986, and so I've done one book on Connecticut, two books on Kansas now, and it's always my dream to have books, and so it's been a pretty exciting time to have three books come out since 2008.
Well, that definitely is, Ken, and I will definitely have to bring you back to talk about Connecticut because, again, I'm a huge Pitt fan, and Dixon's era and Howland's era has really brought back Pitt basketball, and our flagship station will definitely talk about specifically bring you back for the Connecticut one. Now, GJ, your favorite memory of Kansas basketball and and that can kind of jog Ken's memory in specific ways of what's been put in the book. So what would you say, GJ, is your fondest memory of Kansas basketball?
Well, I'd say it's pretty easy to say two of them. I mean, I'll say this probably my first one was going to Allen Fieldhouse in 1978, and so that was my first exposure to Allen Fieldhouse, and I was like, if you're going to go see a basketball game, it's a great place to go see a game. And obviously, if there's 100 things you should do, it's obviously go to Allen Fieldhouse. So that would be, that would be one. But the two that stand out to me is obviously, I got to see KU lose to Oklahoma in 1988. It was their last home game before the Big 8 tournament, and they never lost another game and went on and beat Oklahoma again in the '88 championship. On the 50th year, and so that was a huge highlight. Danny Manning. And then, obviously, when Mario hit that shot, a few years ago, and I was actually in Kansas City watching that game with a former KU basketball player, so those were probably the two that stand out most to me. But, I mean, like you, I didn't grow up in Kansas City, but I've lived in Kansas City most of my adult life. And my son, went to school in Overland Park. And Shawnee Mission South.
We got a rivalry then. I was Shawnee Mission North.
Okay, so I know people that went to all of them, but my son went to South, and I'm a huge fan, and obviously I love what the program's doing now with Phil Self, and so I could go on, and I still cheer for KU. My son actually now lives in Lawrence. And he lives a block away from the KU campus. So I've got some pretty strong ties to KU and the campus.
Awesome.
So Allen Fieldhouse, give us a little bit of background, specifically what you put in the book about Allen Fieldhouse, Ken.
Well, it was interesting as I did research for this book and also for the vault book that I wrote in 2008, which we had great timing. You just talked about Mario's shot in 2008. I was already working on a vault book, which was a series that was done by Whitman Publishing down in Atlanta, and a big book, a coffee table book with lots of pictures, lots of replica inserts of Final Four tickets and program covers and that kind of thing. So we were already working on it, and then Mario hits the shot, and so we extended the deadline a little bit, got pictures of him at the White House and all that into the book, and Allen Fieldhouse in the research process. I mean, I've been to so many games there and knew about Phog Allen, of course, but didn't realize how jealous Phog was of Ahern Fieldhouse at Kansas State back in the 40s and 50s, as he was getting quite along in his coaching career. He had two stints at KU. He of course, he learned the game under James Naismith, the game's inventor, who was Kansas' first coach. And he coached, and he left for a while. He came back, and 39 years of coaching that ended when he was 70 years old. And of course, we have this whole thing in here about the jealousy and how he pushed the state to get the absolute monarch of the Midlands, as it was known then, and built in time. That he wanted to coach Wilt Chamberlain, and he didn't really get a chance to coach Wilt Chamberlain on the varsity at all because he was forced into retirement at age 70. But you could do a whole book on the construction of the Fieldhouse. It's just amazing. We have a chapter in here which gives you all you need to know about the amount of limestone and everything. It's chapter 3 in the book. The first chapter is James Naismith. The second chapter is Phog Allen. And the third chapter is Fieldhouse, because I just think those are the three key elements. There were 700,000 bricks and 2,700 tons of structured steel. That's all in chapter 3, and the price tag was $2,613,167. Just imagine what it would cost today, and the fact that it has stayed, and they've done renovations, which Lou Perkins came in there as athletic director, and I knew Lou from his time at UConn. Before that, he came from UConn to Kansas. And there have been a few times when people have talked about, well, you need to get caught up with the ages. I hope that building always stands and looted it. And the people out of Kansas have done a tremendous job of renovating the Fieldhouse to make it new and still keep all the feeling of 1957 and everything that goes back to the time it was opened and it's flourished and it's you feel like you're in a museum when you're there and you this week was named by the NCAA the loudest and most intimidating building, and I just don't think there's any argument. I've been to games at Cameron Indoor Stadium in Duke. I've been to the Maples Pavilion at Stanford. I've been to the Dean Smith Center. I covered Syracuse in the Carrier Dome. I've been up to see the Izzone with Tom Izzo up at Michigan State. There's some great places. Gamble Pavilion here at UConn isn't bad when they have the student crowd on alert and they play a ranked team. No place like Allen Fieldhouse, and I think you hear that from most people at ESPN and everyone who come in there for the first time and experience it, and if you've been there hundreds of times, like people who are avid Kansas fans, but there's no place like it. I mean, I've been back. Both of my sons have gone back to go to school there, and it gave me a chance when I was working on the books to go back and go to get some games, doing some national work for NBC and for Fox. And what has happened, the way it has evolved since I was a student is just absolutely amazing. I mean, there were good times there. I went from 76 to 80, and we had Darnell Valentine, Ken Koenigs, Paul McKeskey, people like that. But what has happened under Roy Williams and Bill Self and the way the students respond, it's something that I wish everybody that's a sports fan could experience. It's just like going to Wrigley and Fenway and, well, Yankee Stadium's a new stadium now, but I won't include that. But, it's one of those shrines that you really need to see.
Now, GJ, Allen Fieldhouse, how loud is it when you go to the games?
Well, like you said, from a basketball game, it's the loudest stadium I've been in, and I've been, to quite a few of them, and obviously I've been to Ahern, and I was actually born in Manhattan. Ironically, my folks went to K-State, so I got purple and blue and red blood. But it's definitely the loudest place I've ever been, and I've been to a lot of different college venues, like Ken said, and just the nostalgia and the history of how basketball was created, and James Naismith and Phog Allen. I mean, two of the pioneers of basketball, and they obviously changed drastically even since 1980 when you said Darnell Valentine and Paul McKeskey. Those guys, I remember watching them too. They're at Allen Fieldhouse as well, because one of my best friends went to KU right out of high school, and I graduated in '79. So I remember those guys. That Darnell Valentine, he was a star. I saw him play in the high school All-Star game, and against I think Tim Jankovic, who was from Manhattan. They were the two studs there in Kansas, and they ended up one went to K-State, one went to KU. So those were some great times. So for you, what is one of your that obviously you wrote about in the book? What's one of the main things, your top one or two things that you've experienced, in your times there at KU and over thereafter?
Well, you mentioned the top two. I mean, when you win two national championships, wasn't born yet for 1952. Neither one of us. I guess if you give it, we're from the same era. But I've talked to Clyde Lavelle a lot. I've gotten to know some of the guys on the 52 team. It's amazing. There's guys around. But I was at both 88 and 2008, working for the Hartford Courant, and then with NBC for the 2008. I had a great view of Mario's shot. I was on, I think it was the third row of press row down right behind the KU bench. It was an amazing thing watching them in the comeback there against Memphis. How cool, calm, and collected the the staff, the coaching staff, Bill Self, Danny Manning, and all those guys they never lost their cool. I mean, you're behind in a national championship game, and the clock is ticking away, and all the huddles were very organized, and they never lost their confidence, and I think that's why they won. But he took that shot, and players talk about things slowing down and going in slow motion, and it was the same experience for me there. And my wife and my son were up in the upper reaches of the Alamo Dome, but I got some terrific pictures of them celebrating the Kansas victory. And you've got to be objective as a professional reporter, but I've got a lot of crimson and blue inside of me, and I think I've been able to write about the good times and the bad times. There's certainly been some heartbreaking losses in Kansas history, and you just gotta suck it up when there's losses. But that was a great night for my family. It was a great night for everybody who loved Kansas, and an amazing shot. And it just kind of slowed down. It would seem like the ball was in the air forever. And then being in 1988, it was really special since I grew up in the Kansas City area to have like you mentioned, the 50th anniversary of the Final Four right there at Kemper Arena, and one of the last small venues. I think the last one was Denver in 1990. And now we've gone to the Dome era, and it was just a lot more intimate, and I really had not covered a lot of Danny and Larry Brown that era because I had just moved to Hartford and was engrossed in covering UConn, but still, I've been to every Final Four since 1985, so that was great to be at home and to be so close to Lawrence for that championship. But there's tons of memories, and they still keep on going. I mean, I've been back for a few senior nights, and those are always special. There's a chapter on that in the book about what senior night is like at Kansas. It's unlike any other program that I've ever been around, and there's the ceremony before the game, and there's the speeches after the game, and there's the flowers that are thrown on the court. Nobody does senior night better than KU does, and to see Jerron Collins and Cole Aldrich and the year before that, the guys that were in the 2008 with Russell Robinson and those guys. For me, a lot of it's getting to know some of the players recently. I mentioned Clyde Lovellette, and he's been great, and maintaining relationships with Ted Owens and Roy Williams. I just saw Roy about 3 weeks ago around Thanksgiving. North Carolina was here in Connecticut playing at Mohegan Sun. They beat Louisville, and I gave Roy a copy of the book, and Roy's been terrific. Whenever I need him, he's there, and Bill Self has been outstanding. Bill did the foreword for this book and my vault book, and whenever I'm out there, Bill's very helpful. So a lot of it for me is to get them to sustain some relationships with people and create new ones with interviewing players.
All right, when we get back, more with Ken Davis, and I'm going to talk about how I became a Kansas fan. And it's a strange story, and it has to do with the Denver Nuggets. Now, I know that GJ's thinking, what? You're listening to Author's Corner on the Simply G Media Network, on the Total Education Network, and we'll be back in just a moment. We're back to Author's Corner on the Total Education Network, powered by the Simply G Media Network. Again, we could go to totaltutor.net and also simplyg.com. And I'm with GJ Reynolds, and GJ's and Ken Davis, author of 100 Things Kansas Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die, are reminiscing about their famous moments in Kansas basketball history. Well, the strangest story is, as I said at the break, is my greatest memories involve a reason because I was a Denver Nuggets fan. And it was the first team I followed in basketball, and I was a former college basketball player. I played Division III for Western Maryland. But the way I developed my love for basketball was the Denver Nuggets, and that was an unbelievable, interesting team of people, Dan Issel and different things. But the coach of that ABA team was Larry Brown. And ever since then, I followed Larry Brown's career, and when he was the coach at Kansas, I became a huge fan of his and Kansas. So that's how it started, Ken, and I know Larry's definitely part of your book, right?
Oh, absolutely. Was Larry wearing those jean overalls when he was coaching Denver, or was that? I know he wore those in the ABA. There's some hilarious pictures of the 70s of him wearing bib overalls and having some wild haircuts. But yeah, Larry now is at SMU and is in UConn's conference now, so I'll get to see Larry when SMU comes to visit Connecticut. I don't know how that works, but conference realignment has made some strange bedfellows. But it's kind of weird for me because I moved east in 1981, and Ted Owens was still coach then, and like I said, I didn't get back a lot during. I don't think I got back any at all during the Larry Brown era. I saw them in some NCAA tournament play, but never really got to know Larry very well. But absolutely. There's a lot of Carolina and North Carolina in the books, and Larry is one of those guys. And there's obviously Dean Smith played under Phog Allen, went on to become a longtime coach at North Carolina. Roy Williams was his assistant. Larry Brown played for Dean Smith. So there's a section in there where you read a lot about the Carolina connection is the strongest. Of course, Adolph Rupp played for Phog Allen as well. So you have the three winningest programs in college basketball history with Kentucky, North Carolina, and Kansas, and they all have that tie back to Naismith and Allen and in Kansas, and that's where it all stems from. So, I think just becoming a Kansas fan made me love college basketball in general. In fact, I think, this obviously this is geared towards Kansas fans, but I think if you really, really love college basketball, this is one of those books that you could read and still enjoy, because you find out why Naismith came to Lawrence and how Phog Allen started out, and there's stories in there about the rivalry with Missouri and Kansas State, and obviously the rich tournament history and some of the big losses in VCU and Bradley's and Arizona. Well, the one that the title is the loss that left a scar, because that was a great team with Jock Vaughn and Scott Pollard and those guys that looked like they were going to maybe even come close to being undefeated, and lost to Arizona and didn't get to the Final Four. So, Kansas basketball isn't just restricted to Lawrence. It's nationwide and maybe worldwide.
It definitely is, and my greatest memory, again, is the Manning's run. Danny Manning, one of my favorite players ever at Kansas, just the whole process of how they were such underdogs, and then they just went on this huge roll all the way to winning the national championship. And, GJ, were you in the military at that time, or did you get to experience some of that?
I was living in Kansas City, so I got the experience firsthand. I didn't go to the Final Four, but I like I said, I went to their last home game there in Lawrence, and they lost to Oklahoma, and they never lost another game, and so it was an exciting time. So you brought up a name, Ted Owens. He came to my junior college to sign Mark Ewing. You might remember Mark Ewing, who signed. Yep. He was like 6'11". So I went to college with Mark, okay. And Ted Owens came, and I was actually the photographer for the newspaper there at my school. So I got to meet Ted Owens and document the signing. Yeah. And so obviously a little tidbits there. So, yeah, we could probably talk all day long. Where can we find more about you, and where can we find more about your book, so we can get some people to buy it? I mean, we have Christmas coming up, and be a great gift. Whether you're a KU fan or not, if you're a basketball fan, you definitely want to get the book.
Well, it's all the bookstores in the Kansas City area and everything. The Barnes and Noble carrying it, and it's at the Kansas bookstore and all that. But you can go online to the usual sources: Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I'm not sure if Rally House and Kansas Sampler have them on the website right now. I know they've had them in the stores. I think Walmart has it online. I think Neil mentioned earlier my Facebook page is facebook.com/100thingskansas, and you can find out anything about the book there. I've been posting things since September. My blog site is Ken Davis Files, FILES.com, and you can do that, KenDavisFiles.com/100thingskansas. There's a page in there where you can if you would like my autograph, have a book signed to you or signed to someone that's a Kansas fan, I can take care of it that way. We're getting pretty tight here on the Christmas orders, and that may not be possible now. But certainly, the books just came out really widely exposed in November. We had an early release at the Kansas bookstore in October. I was back there for Late Night in the Phog, which is KU's version of Midnight Madness, which was on homecoming weekend, and everybody was hyped up about Andrew Wiggins, and seeing him actually in Kansas, at least in a practice uniform for the first time, it was just mass hysteria. And so we had a couple of signings that weekend, and hoping to get back either in January or February to do some more signings. So it's out there all over the place. Just you can just go Google and enter 100 things Kansas fans, and it'll pop up, tell you where you can buy it.
And Ken, tell us specifically, once you launched the book, the response of the Kansas fans in on the campus. It was pretty large, wasn't it? The response for the book.
For the book, I'm hearing it's doing very well, and we've got over a couple hundred people that are following me on Facebook with announcements about things. And the people at Triumph told me this well, that they're very happy with the way it's going. I think it's perfectly timed. We're talking about James Naismith being the first chapter. If you're doing a series of interviews with authors, I'm sure you know most authors are behind in their writing, and I was missing my deadline right around the time when Andrew Wiggins committed towards the end of the commitment period. So we decided to move things around and change and make chapter 100 on Andrew Wiggins, and we talk about the way it was announced through social media. There was only one reporter allowed in his high school when Andrew made the decision, and it came out through social media. That's the way Bill Self and his staff found out, and it's a kind of a nice chapter to kind of close it out and maybe tease you for number 101 when whatever happens this season. The team is young and off to a little bit of a slow start, but slower start for most programs will be a good start, but Kansas fans have high expectations, of course. But I think by the time January, February rolls around, this is going to be a very good team. Well,
absolutely, that's interesting, Ken. I'm going to definitely have you. I want to invite you back for one of your older books to talk about Connecticut. I would be fascinated to learn about their history, and I guess crying some beer about that because I'm a huge Pitt fan, and there's the memories of some Connecticut Pitt games. There's some that definitely ruined my whole dreams of Pitt ever going to the Final Four based on some of the
incredible matchups at Madison Square Garden, and I'm in mourning this year. I really miss the Big East as it was, and I hate conference realignment. I'm glad Kansas is still in the Big 12 or the old Big 8, so at least we've preserved some of these things. But I miss the Kansas-Missouri rivalry, and people have got their heads in the wrong places when they think that this is good for college sports.
Well, GJ, I know you love talking sports, don't you, G?
Love talking sports. We could talk all day, and I have tons and tons of sports trivia in my mind and in my brain. If I could only get paid to unleash it, I'd be pretty happy about that. But so you've got a lot going on, and again, thanks for being on our show and talking about KU basketball. We'll have to have you back on, talk about any other books or have any things about sports. I mean, you got two big sports fans here, and we can spend a whole hour, or probably spend all day talking about KU basketball. Or college basketball.
Oh, definitely, and he brought up different things, but definitely thanks for coming on the show, and GJ and I are definitely going to read the book, and we're going to really promote it up on our social media end, and we'll definitely stay in touch, Ken, okay?
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
All right, take care, guys. Okay, bye-bye. You're listening to Author's Corner, and we'll be back in just a moment.